The deep black of space stretched endlessly around the USS Intrepid. Tiny white dots of distant stars provided the only light in this unexplored section of the Orion Arm. Inside the ship, the bridge hummed with quiet activity as crew members went about their tasks. Captain Diane Miller sat in her command chair, one leg crossed over the other, looking at the main view screen. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her blue uniform was crisp and clean. After 15 years in space, she had learned to stay calm even when facing the unknown. "Status report, Commander Hayes," she said, turning to her second-in-command. Eric Hayes looked up from his station. His fingers moved quickly over the control panel as he checked all systems. "All systems normal, Captain. We are on course through Sector 47 and fuel reserves are at 87%. Captain Miller nodded. "Good. And how is the crew doing with the extended mission? Morale is high. The movie night yesterday helped. Though I still think your choice of ancient sci-fi films was a bit on the nose," Hayes said with a small smile. "Everyone loves the classics, Commander. There's nothing like watching old movies about space while actually being in space," Miller replied. The easy conversation was interrupted when Laura Barnes, the chief science officer, called out from her station. "Captain, I'm picking up unusual energy readings at coordinates 227 Mark 089. Miller straightened in her chair. "Can you identify the source?" Barnes shook her head, her blonde ponytail swaying with the movement. "Negative, Captain. It's unlike anything in our database. The patterns suggest artificial origin rather than a natural phenomenon." "Put it on screen maximum magnification," Miller ordered. The main view screen changed to show a section of space that looked empty at first glance, but as the computer enhanced the image, they could see a faint distortion, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. "Interesting," Barnes muttered, adjusting her instruments. "The energy signature is growing stronger. Whatever it is, it's either getting bigger or coming closer." Commander Hayes moved to stand beside the captain's chair. "Should we change course? Regulations say we should avoid unknown energy patterns until properly identified." Miller considered this for a moment. "No, this is why we're out here, Commander, to discover new things. But let's be careful. Sound yellow alert and inform Security Chief Donovan to prepare a team, just in case." In the security section of the ship, Chief Patrick Donovan was running his team through combat drills when the yellow alert sounded. He was a tall, muscular man with a shaved head and 20 years of military experience. "All right, people, pack it up." Yellow alert. "This is not a drill," he announced to his team of 6 security officers. Officer Ryan Garcia looked up from the target practice. "We finally getting some action, Chief?" "Maybe. But remember, we're explorers first, fighters second. So let's hope." "It's the good kind of excitement," Donovan replied, checking his equipment. "Suit up and meet me at Security Station 1 in 5 minutes. Back on the bridge, the strange energy reading had developed into something more concrete. A shape was forming on the screen, metallic and smooth. "It's a ship," Barnes said in awe. "And it's big, at least twice our size." The alien vessel was unlike anything they had seen before. It looked like polished black stone rather than metal, with no visible windows or propulsion systems. Its surface seemed to swallow light rather than reflect it. "It's beautiful," whispered Greg Martinez from the communications station. The young officer was the newest addition to the bridge crew, and this was his first encounter with a potential alien species. "And potentially dangerous," added Commander Hayes. "Any weapon signatures, Lieutenant Barnes?" Barnes shook her head. "None that I can detect, but their technology is clearly advanced. I can't even tell how they're moving. There's no radiation trail, no exhaust." "They're matching our speed and heading," reported the helm officer, Linda Powell. "They're positioning themselves alongside us about 5,000 meters to starboard." Captain Miller stood up. "Well, they clearly know we're here. Martinez, open all standard greeting channels and broadcast our first contact message." "Yes, Captain." Martinez's fingers danced over his console. "Broadcasting on all frequencies, universal translation protocol enabled." The bridge fell silent as they waited for a response. Seconds stretched into minutes with no reply. "Maybe they don't understand our communication methods," suggested Barnes. Or maybe they're deciding whether we're worth talking to, Hayes said grimly. Suddenly, Martinez sat up straight. Captain, I'm detecting an energy buildup from the alien vessel. Before he could finish, a bright green light filled the bridge. It wasn't blinding, but seemed to pass through everything, including the crew members. What the hell is that? Donovan demanded as he entered the bridge, his security team right behind him. We're being scanned, Barnes explained, checking her instruments. It's some kind of advanced sensor technology. It's passing through our hull like it isn't even there. Are we in danger? Miller asked sharply. Barnes shook her head. I don't think so. The energy levels aren't harmful to organic tissue or our systems. They're just looking at us. The green light continued for another 30 seconds before abruptly shutting off. Scan complete, Barnes reported. No damage to ship or crew. Miller turned to Martinez. Any response to our message now? Before Martinez could answer, the alien ship began to move. It turned away from the Intrepid and accelerated rapidly. They're leaving, Powell exclaimed. And fast. They just went to what would be our equivalent of warp speed. The bridge crew watched in confusion as the alien vessel disappeared from their sensors, leaving them alone once more in the vastness of space. Well, that was brief, Hayes said, breaking the silence. Not exactly the first contact scenario we trained for. Miller frowned. Something scared them off. Barnes' full analysis of that scan. I want to know exactly what they were looking for and what they found. Already working on it, Captain, Barnes replied, her fingers flying over her console. But preliminary results are strange. The scan was incredibly thorough. It didn't just look at our hull and life signs. It penetrated every system on the ship, including our computer cores. Dr. Natalie Winters, the ship's xenobiologist, stepped onto the bridge. I came as soon as I heard we had contact. Did I miss everything? Miller nodded. I'm afraid so, Doctor. They came, they scanned, they left. Winters looked disappointed. That's a shame. What species were they? Unknown, Barnes answered. They didn't match any profiles in our database. From his engineering station at the back of the bridge, Kevin Russell laughed. Maybe they didn't like my music. I was streaming some old Earth classics through the ship's entertainment system when they showed up. Somehow I doubt alien visitors would run away because they don't appreciate your taste in music, Russell, Hayes said dryly. Captain Miller returned to her chair, thinking. Whatever the reason, I have a feeling we haven't seen the last of them. Log everything and send a full report back to Earth Command. Martinez, keep all channels open in case they decide to come back and talk. Yes, Captain, Martinez acknowledged. As the crew returned to their duties, Miller couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened, something that would change the course of their mission and perhaps human history. What she didn't know was that aboard the retreating alien vessel, panic had set in. The Vexorans, as they called themselves, were sending urgent messages to their homeworld about the terrifying new species they had just encountered, a species whose seemingly primitive vessel contained technologies that registered as weapons of unimaginable power on their advanced scanning systems. The first step of a massive interstellar misunderstanding had begun, and neither the humans nor the aliens had any idea what was coming next. Aboard the Vexoran vessel Dominant Truth, Captain Zierthal stared at the scan results with all four of his eyes wide open in shock. His gray skin had turned almost white with fear, and the protective ridge on his head was fully extended, a biological response to extreme danger that hadn't evolved out of his species, despite their advanced technology. Run the scans again, he ordered his science officer. There must be some mistake. Science Officer Mevlock shook her head, her long fingers trembling as they moved across the control panel. I have run it 3 times, Captain. The results are consistent. The human vessel contains technology far beyond anything we have encountered before. The ship's strategic analyst, Drenvar, pointed at specific sections of the holographic display floating between them. Look at their power core. Our scans indicate it is a controlled antimatter reaction, but contained in a way our scientists have only theorized about. And their communications array, added Mevlock. It appears to use quantum entanglement principles. They could theoretically communicate instantly across the galaxy with such technology. Zirthal felt his second heart begin beating faster, a sign of severe stress in his species. What about weapons? Drenvar changed the display to show different sections of the human ship. That is the most concerning part. We cannot identify most of their systems, but many register as potential weapons platforms, and these devices connected to their neural systems. The display showed human crew members wearing small headsets in a recreation room. Our analysis suggests these are psychic warfare devices, capable of altering reality through mental projection, Mevlok explained. The humans were using them casually, as if such godlike power was commonplace. Captain Zirthal stood up abruptly. We must report this immediately. Helmsman, set course for the nearest communication relay. Maximum speed. We need to warn the Alliance about this new species. As the Vexeran ship accelerated away, Zirthal drafted an emergency message to the Vexeran High Command. Encountered unknown species designating themselves as humans. Initial scans classify them as minimum, Class 9 threat level. Recommend immediate diplomatic initiative before they recognize our technological inferiority. Back on the USS Intrepid, the crew continued their analysis of the brief alien encounter. Captain Miller sat in the conference room with her senior staff, reviewing what little information they had gathered about the mysterious visitors. So they scanned us thoroughly and then ran away, Miller summarized. The question is why? Dr. Winters, the xenobiologist, tapped her tablet thoughtfully. It could be cultural. Some species might consider scanning before communication to be normal, while direct communication might be saved for those deemed worthy of interaction. Or they didn't like what they saw, Security Chief Donovan suggested grimly. Maybe they were looking for something specific and didn't find it, or worse, they did find something they consider threatening. Laura Barnes pulled up the scan analysis on the main screen. Their scanning technology is unlike anything we've seen before. It penetrated all our systems, but it seems to use principles we don't fully understand. Could they have misinterpreted something they found? Commander Hayes asked. Cultural or technological misunderstandings are common even between human groups, let alone with an entirely alien species. Kevin Russell, who had joined the meeting as head engineer, laughed suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. Sorry, he said, still smiling. I just had a funny thought. What if they scanned us and thought my virtual reality gaming system was some kind of super weapon? I was playing Galactic Conqueror when they showed up. The room fell silent as everyone considered this possibility. That's actually not impossible, Barnes said slowly. Their scanning technology clearly works on different principles than ours. They might interpret our technology in ways we wouldn't expect. Miller leaned forward. Let's think about this. What else might they have misunderstood? Our nuclear power plant, Russell suggested. It's pretty standard tech for us, but who knows how it might register on their scanners. Our communication arrays, added Martinez. We use quantum field theory in some of our long-range communications. Dr. Winters nodded excitedly. This could explain their hasty departure. If they misinterpreted our everyday technology as highly advanced or threatening, they might have retreated to reassess. Or to prepare for war, Donovan said darkly. Captain, Miller held up her hand. Let's not jump to conclusions. We don't know enough about these aliens to guess their intentions. For now, we continue our mission, but with increased alertness. I want round-the-clock sensor sweeps. If they come back, I want to know immediately. 3 days passed without any sign of the alien vessel. The USS Intrepid continued its survey of the sector, mapping stellar phenomena and collecting data. The crew remained on elevated alert status, but as hours turned into days, the tension began to ease. Captain Miller was in her quarters, reviewing star charts when the ship's AI announced, Captain, multiple vessels approaching at high speed. Miller quickly made her way to the bridge. Report. 7 ships, Captain, Hayes informed her. Different design from the one we encountered before, but similar energy signatures suggest they're from the same civilization. They're arranged in a ceremonial formation, Barnes added, studying her readings. Not an attack pattern. They're hailing us, Martinez announced from his station. Standard electromagnetic transmission compatible with our systems. Miller straightened her uniform. On screen. The main view screen flickered and revealed an alien face. The being had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, grayish skin with a ridge running from the top of its head down its spine, and no visible nose or ears. It wore an elaborate garment with multiple layers of what appeared to be a metallic fabric. "Greetings, noble and powerful humans," the alien said, its words translated by the ship's computer. "I am Ambassador Kelvos of the Vexeron Alliance. We come in peace and deep respect, seeking dialogue with your magnificent civilization." Miller exchanged a surprised glance with Hayes before responding. "This is Captain Diane Miller of the Earthship Intrepid. We welcome your peaceful approach and are open to dialogue." The alien made a complex gesture with its 4-fingered hands. "Most honored Captain Miller, we are delighted by your gracious response. The Vexeron High Command has sent me with gifts and offers of friendship and alliance. With your permission, we would be humbled to come aboard your vessel for proper diplomatic exchange." Miller blinked in surprise at the overly deferential tone. "We would be pleased to host you, Ambassador. Please allow us time to prepare suitable accommodations." "Of course, Exalted Captain. We will await your signal." The transmission ended. Hayes turned to Miller. "Exalted Captain?" "Something's definitely strange here," Miller agreed. "They seem afraid of us." Dr. Winters, who had arrived on the bridge during the transmission, nodded thoughtfully. "I think Mr. Russell's joke might have been right. They've completely misinterpreted who and what we are. The question is," Miller said, "do we correct their mistake or use it to our advantage?" As the crew prepared for their first formal diplomatic contact with an alien civilization, none of them realized just how massive the misunderstanding had become, or how deeply it would affect relations between humans and Vexerons in the days to come. Aboard the diplomatic vessel, Ambassador Kelvos was reviewing historical protocols for meeting with godlike civilizations. Convinced that humanity's apparent technological superiority could only be matched by their capacity for either tremendous destruction or magnificent benevolence. The future of the Vexeron Alliance would depend on which path these mysterious humans chose to take. The USS Intrepid's largest conference room had been quickly transformed into a reception area. The standard steel tables were covered with blue cloths bearing the Earth United Space Agency logo. Captain Miller had ordered the chef to prepare the best food possible, though no one knew what the aliens might be able to eat. "Remember," Miller instructed her crew as they made final preparations, "we know very little about the Vexerons' culture. Be respectful, watch for social cues, and don't make any sudden movements that might be misinterpreted." Commander Hayes nodded. "And what about their apparent misconception about us?" Miller considered this for a moment. "For now, we observe. Let's see what they believe before we decide how to respond." Dr. Winters had set up basic medical scanning equipment. "I'll be monitoring their biological responses. It might help us understand their emotional states during the meeting." Security Chief Donovan stood by the door with 2 officers. They were unarmed, as Miller had decided weapons would send the wrong message, but they remained alert. "They're docking now," Martinez reported over the comm system. "Their shuttle has matched with our airlock on Deck C." Miller straightened her uniform. "Showtime, people. Let's make first contact something for the history books." 10 minutes later, the doors slid open to reveal Ambassador Kelvos and 4 other Vexerons. They wore elaborate robes with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change in the light. The ambassador carried a large, ornate box. What caught everyone's attention was how the aliens moved. They entered with their heads bowed, taking small steps as if afraid to make noise. Their 4 eyes would occasionally glance up at the humans, then quickly look back down. "Greetings, mighty humans," Ambassador Kelvos said, his translator converting, his high-pitched clicks into English. "We are humbled to stand in your presence." Captain Miller stepped forward with a diplomatic smile. "Welcome aboard the Intrepid, Ambassador Kelvos. We're honored to host representatives of the Vexeron Alliance." The ambassador made a complex gesture with his 4-fingered hands. "The honor is entirely ours, Exalted Captain. To be in the presence of such advanced beings is a privilege few in our history have experienced. Miller maintained her composure, despite the strange comment. Please introduce your delegation. Kelvos gestured to each of his companions. This is Tirleth, our communications specialist, Fendor, cultural attaché, Zevnara, scientific liaison, and Prelmach, security observer. Miller introduced her team in turn. When she mentioned Kevin Russell as the chief engineer, the aliens visibly flinched. The master of your power systems, Kelvos whispered, with what sounded like awe. We are, truly in the presence of greatness. Russell shot a confused look at Captain Miller, who gave a subtle shake of her head, signaling him to play along. Now, Kelvos continued, lifting the ornate box. We bring gifts as is proper when meeting. A superior civilization, please accept these tokens of our respect and admiration. He opened the box to reveal a collection of glowing crystals, each pulsing with its own inner light. These are memory crystals containing the complete scientific and cultural knowledge of the Vexaran Alliance, the ambassador explained. Our most precious resource, freely given to the noble humans. The bridge crew exchanged shocked glances. This was far beyond standard diplomatic exchange. The aliens were offering their entire civilization's knowledge without asking for anything in return. This is extremely generous, Miller said carefully, but such a valuable gift requires equal exchange. We wouldn't want to create an imbalance between our peoples. The Vexarans looked at each other in confusion. Finally, Kelvos spoke. Forgive us, but what could we possibly offer that would be of value to beings of your advancement? Your antimatter containment technology alone is centuries beyond our capabilities. Hayes coughed to hide his surprise. Our what? Your power? Core, said Zevnara, the scientific liaison. Our scans detected a perfectly stable antimatter reaction, something our scientists have only theorized. Laura Barnes suddenly understood. You're referring to our nuclear fusion reactor? The aliens looked confused. Nuclear fusion? A primitive energy source using atomic binding energy? Zevnara shook her head. No, we clearly detected antimatter annihilation processes. Miller decided to redirect the conversation. Perhaps there has been some misunderstanding in your scans. We would be happy to discuss technology exchange later. For now, let's focus on establishing diplomatic relations. Of course, exalted Captain, Kelvos said quickly. We have prepared a treaty of non-aggression and mutual defense. The Vexaran High Command has authorized me to offer protected status to Earth and all human colonies, in exchange for, well, for your continued benevolence toward our species. Sharon Patel, the cultural liaison officer who had been quiet until now, stepped forward. Ambassador, it seems you view humans as far more advanced than we actually are. May I ask why? The aliens looked at each other nervously before Kelvos responded. Your modesty is admirable but unnecessary. Our scans revealed your true nature. The psychic amplification devices your crew was using for recreation, the quantum communication array, the reality manipulation chambers on your lower decks. Reality? Manipulation? Russell began, then stopped as realization dawned. Wait, do you mean the holodeck? It's just a virtual reality room for entertainment. The aliens stared at him in disbelief. Entertainment, Zevnara whispered. You use technology that can alter the fabric of space-time for amusement? Before Russell could respond, Miller jumped in. Our cultures clearly have different perspectives on technology. Perhaps we should share a meal and learn more about each other's ways. The diplomatic dinner that followed was unlike anything the intrepid crew had experienced. The Vexarans treated every casual comment from a human as profound wisdom. When Dr. Winters mentioned that humans had evolved from primates on Earth, the aliens took detailed notes as if she were revealing sacred knowledge. The strangest moment came when Engineer Russell accidentally knocked over his drink. The purple liquid splashed onto Kelvos's ceremonial robe. Instead of annoyance, the ambassador's reaction was one of terror. All four Vexarans froze, their skin changing to a pale gray color. I accept whatever judgment you deem appropriate, Kelvos said, his voice trembling. The failure was mine for positioning myself in the path of your demonstration. Demonstration? Russell was confused. It was just an accident. I'm really sorry about your robe. The tension in the room was thick as the aliens exchanged confused glances. You mean, this was not a test of our reaction to a chemical attack? Asked Fendor, the cultural attaché. Hayes nearly choked on his food. Chemical attack? It's just synthetic grape juice. The Vexarans seemed unable to process this information. Their entire approach had been based on the belief that humans were testing them, displaying power while pretending to be diplomatic. Captain Miller could see the confusion building toward a potential diplomatic disaster. I think, she said carefully, that our civilizations have some significant misconceptions about each other. Ambassador Kelvos, would you be willing to have a private conversation with me where we can speak more openly? The ambassador nodded slowly. Of course, exalted Captain. As they moved to a separate room, Miller knew she faced a difficult choice. The misunderstanding had put humanity in a position of unexpected advantage. Correcting it might expose Earth to potential danger if the Vexarans' respect turned to hostility. But continuing the deception violated everything she believed about honest diplomatic relations. What had started as a simple scan was quickly becoming one of the most complex first contact situations in human history, and the next few hours would determine its outcome. Captain Miller led Ambassador Kelvos into her private office. The room was simple but comfortable, with a few personal items displayed on shelves, a photograph of her family, a small rock from the first alien planet she had visited, and a few old paper books she had brought from Earth. The Vexaran ambassador stood awkwardly, his 4 eyes darting around the room as if searching for hidden technology. Please, sit down, Miller said, gesturing to a chair. Would you like some water or tea? Water would be acceptable, thank you, Kelvos replied, carefully lowering himself into the chair. When Miller handed him a simple glass of water, he studied it suspiciously before taking a small sip. Miller sat across from him. Ambassador, I believe we need to have an honest conversation about your perception of humans. Kelvos nodded. I agree, exalted Captain. There seems to be some confusion. First, please just call me Captain, or Miller if you prefer. The exalted part isn't necessary. She leaned forward. Can you explain exactly what your scans told you about our ship? The ambassador's upper ridge quivered slightly. Our scanning technology is designed to assess threat levels and technological advancement. When we scanned your vessel, it registered as a Class 9 threat level, the highest in our classification system. And what exactly made us seem so threatening? Miller asked. Your power systems registered as contained antimatter reactions. Your communication systems appeared to use quantum entanglement principles. Your recreational technology showed signs of psychic amplification capabilities. And your defensive systems. He hesitated. Well, we couldn't identify them, which our protocols interpret as highly advanced. Miller nodded, understanding dawning. I see. And this led you to believe we are some kind of super-advanced civilization? Are you not? Kelvos asked, genuine confusion in his voice. Before Miller could answer, the door chimed. Enter, she called. Lieutenant Chris Mendoza stepped in. As the ship's xenolinguistics specialist, he had been working with the Vexaran language since their arrival. Excuse me, Captain, but I've made an important discovery about the translation system. He nodded respectfully to the ambassador. With your permission, I'd like to explain something that might help our communication. Please do, Miller said. Mendoza activated his tablet. I've been analyzing the Vexaran language matrix, and I discovered a fundamental translation error. Their language uses similar terms for different concepts depending on context. When their scanners analyzed our ship, many of our systems were categorized using terms that have completely different meanings to them than to us. Can you give an example? Miller asked. Yes. Our nuclear fusion reactor uses principles that in their language translate closest to energy from opposing forces, but their term for antimatter reactions is energy from opposite existence. The Translation Matrix couldn't distinguish between these concepts properly. Kelvos leaned forward. Are you saying your power source is not antimatter-based? No, Miller replied. We use nuclear fusion, the same process that powers stars. It's advanced by our standards, but it's technology we've had for over a century. The ambassador's ridge flattened against his head. And the reality manipulation chambers? The psychic warfare devices? Virtual reality entertainment systems, Miller explained. They create computer-generated environments for recreation. Games, stories, simulated experiences. They have no effect on actual reality. Mendoza continued. The same misunderstanding happened with multiple systems. Our standard communications were interpreted as quantum technology. Our defensive capabilities were unidentifiable to their scanners simply because they use different principles, not because they're more advanced. Kelvos was silent for a long moment. This is difficult to process. We have based our entire diplomatic approach on the belief that humanity was far beyond our technological level. Miller smiled kindly. We're an advanced spacefaring species, but we have our limitations. We're explorers hoping to learn about the galaxy and make peaceful contact with other intelligent life. I see, the ambassador said quietly. This changes everything. Meanwhile, in engineering, Kevin Russell was giving Zev Nara, the Vexeran scientific liaison, a tour of the ship's systems. So this is our main reactor, Russell explained, pointing to the large cylindrical chamber that hummed with energy. Nuclear, fusion, hydrogen atoms combining to form helium, releasing energy in the process. Zev Nara studied the reactor with growing confusion. But our scans detected antimatter signatures. That's your translator misinterpreting the data, Russell said. We don't have the technology to safely contain antimatter in these quantities. That's still theoretical for us. The Vexeran scientist moved to a control panel, examining the readouts. Your technology is remarkably efficient for such basic principles. We use similar fusion technology, but your containment field design is quite innovative. Russell beamed with pride. Thanks. I helped design some of the cooling systems myself. Want to see how we handle the plasma flow? As Russell enthusiastically explained the engineering details, Zev Nara began to realize something important. While humans might not have godlike technology, they had developed unique solutions to common problems. Their approach was different, sometimes surprisingly elegant in its simplicity. You know, she said, interrupting Russell's technical explanation, your people approach problems differently than we do. Where we might add complexity, you find elegance and simplicity. Russell laughed. That's because we're always trying to save weight on spaceships. Every extra kilogram costs fuel, so we get really good at doing more with less. This simple explanation struck Zev Nara as profound. The Vexerans, with their resource-rich homeworld, had never faced such constraints in their technological development. Back in the captain's office, Miller was dealing with a growing crisis. Ambassador Kelvos appeared to be having something similar to a panic attack. If you are not the godlike beings we thought, he said, his breathing rapid, then the treaty I was authorized to offer is inappropriate. My government will recall me. This is a diplomatic disaster. It doesn't have to be, Miller said calmly. Yes, we're not as advanced as you thought, but that doesn't mean we can't be valuable allies. Different perspectives often lead to innovation. The ambassador looked up. You don't understand. 7 star systems have already requested human protection from Vexeran expansion based on the reports we sent. The High Command has already begun withdrawing forces from contested regions, believing humans would enforce peace. Miller sat back, stunned. You've been expanding into other species' territories? Resource acquisition is necessary for our continued development, Kelvos said defensively. But now, if word spreads that humans are not the superior force we claimed, the political balance of the entire sector will destabilize. The comm system chimed. Captain, Hayes' voice came through. We've received an urgent message from Earth Command. They've been contacted by representatives of something called the Galactic Council regarding our new status as a protector species. They're asking for guidance on how to respond. Miller closed her eyes briefly. The misunderstanding had already spread far beyond the Intrepid and the Vexaran diplomatic vessel. Earth was being pulled into interstellar politics before they even understood the players involved. "Tell them I'll respond shortly," she said, then turned back to the increasingly distressed ambassador. "It seems we have a complicated situation on our hands." "Indeed," Kelvos agreed, his ridge now completely flat against his head. A sign of extreme stress, Miller guessed. "What do you intend to do now that you know the truth?" Miller considered her options carefully. The ethical path would be to correct the misunderstanding immediately, but doing so might destabilize an entire sector of space and potentially put Earth at risk. The pragmatic approach would be to maintain the deception temporarily while working toward a more balanced relationship. "I think," she said slowly, "that we need to find a middle path, one that preserves peace without perpetuating falsehoods." As she spoke, Miller didn't realize that Engineer Russell and Zev Nara had made a discovery that would offer exactly the solution she was looking for. One based not on technological superiority, but on the unique human perspective that had allowed them to reach the stars in the first place. The main conference room of the Intrepid was filled with both human crew members and Vexaran delegates. The air felt tense as Captain Miller stood at the head of the table. "We've discovered a significant misunderstanding between our peoples," she began. "The Vexarans believed we possessed godlike technology due to translation and scanning errors." Ambassador Kelvos nodded, his ridge now partially raised in a more relaxed position. "We mistook your standard technology for advanced systems beyond our understanding. However," Engineer Russell said, stepping forward with Zev Nara beside him, "we found something interesting during our technical exchange." Zev Nara, the Vexaran scientist, displayed a holographic diagram. "Humans approach problems differently than we do. Where we develop complex solutions requiring abundant resources, humans create elegant, efficient designs due to their resource limitations. In simple terms," Russell explained, "we're good at doing more with less because we had to be. Earth doesn't have the same natural resources as the Vexaran homeworld." Captain Miller smiled as she understood where this was going. "So while we may not have the advanced technology you thought we had, we do have different perspectives that could be valuable to your people." Ambassador Kelvos perked up. "This is true. Your fusion containment system is remarkably efficient, despite using principles we considered outdated. Your communication systems achieve similar results to ours with half the power consumption. And your adaptability is impressive," added Fendor, the cultural attaché. "You've shown more creativity in our brief interactions than many Vexaran development teams show in years." Captain Miller moved to the center of the room. "I propose a new type of alliance, not one based on fear or perceived technological superiority, but on mutual exchange of ideas and approaches. The Vexarans have advanced technology in many areas," she continued. "Humans have innovative problem-solving skills and resource efficiency. Together we could develop solutions neither of us would discover alone." Ambassador Kelvos considered this. "And what of our political situation? 7 systems now believe humans will protect them from Vexaran expansion." "Perhaps," Dr. Winter suggested, "that expansion isn't necessary anymore. With human efficiency applied to Vexaran technology, you might get more from the resources you already have." The ambassador's eyes widened. "A perspective we hadn't considered. Rather than seeking new resources, maximize the use of existing ones." Commander Hayes spoke up. "As for the Galactic Council and our new role, we can explain that humans aren't offering military protection but technological cooperation that benefits everyone." The meeting continued for hours, as both sides developed a framework for this new type of relationship. By the end, a true alliance had formed, not between superior and inferior species, but between equals with different strengths. 1 week later, as the Vexaran diplomatic vessel prepared to depart, Ambassador Kelvos presented Captain Miller with a small crystal. "This contains the true language matrix of all alliance species," he said, "to prevent future misunderstandings." Miller smiled. "And this data drive contains human history. showing how our resource limitations drove our innovation. It might help your people understand our approach better. As they watched the Vexeran ships depart, Hayes turned to Miller. You know, if they hadn't scanned us and gotten everything wrong, none of this would have happened. Miller nodded. Sometimes the biggest misunderstandings lead to the greatest understandings. In the coming years, the Human-Vexeran alliance would transform the sector. Human efficiency combined with Vexeran technology created unprecedented advances. Other species, initially fearful of both humans and Vexerans, joined the growing cooperative. And it all began because some aliens scanned a human ship and instantly regretted everything.